All right, this is a video answer key for homework number 4, the SPSS version. So if you did this assignment with your own data, which I hope you did, on using SPSS, here's how it would look. I'm going to use my own data. I made a video for the week 4 folder about t-tests, and I made up a data set that looks like this. This is comparing people who live on the East Coast and people who live on the West Coast in their enjoyment of East Coast rap and West Coast rap. So if you aren't familiar with what I mean by East Coast rap and West Coast rap, watch the other video that is in the week 4 folder. So here's my data. The zeros, let's take a look at the variable view. Zeros are the East Coast dwellers, the people who live on the East Coast, and ones are the West Coast. So I have, looks like 20 cases of each, 20 East Coast, 20 West Coast. And I rated their enjoyment of rap on a scale from 1 to 10. So here's the homework. What are the two variables you'll be looking at? One of them is the categorical variable of where you live or residence, East Coast or West Coast. And the other one is the dependent variable. It is a rating on a scale from 1 to 10 of how much each group liked. For this one, I'll just do how much they liked East Coast rap. And that is a measure on a 1 to 10 scale. So that's an interval ratio variable. Which variable is my independent variable? Where they live. What's my dependent variable? Their rating of their enjoyment of East Coast rap. Why do I think there might be an effect of the IV on the DV? Well, there was serious clashes and wars and differences in style between East Coast rap and West Coast rap. And I'm assuming that people who live on the East Coast are probably going to like East Coast rap better than people who live on the West Coast, because the styles emerged sort of based on different styles of the places where they emerged. Sampling strategy. Well, considering that I made the data up, I think we'll just go with, let's say, random. I didn't really have a sampling strategy. I just made the data up. But if every member of the East Coast had an equal chance of being represented, that would be a random sample. If I selected the sample so that it represented the larger population in terms of, I don't know, ethnic makeup, gender, age, that'd be a representative sample. But I probably just picked 20 people, which would be a convenient sample. How did I operationalize the dependent variable? I said that liking of East Coast rap was a rating on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being more the highest level of liking, on a selection of rap music that I played for my sample, all coming from the East Coast. So the rappers were all East Coast based. It was East Coast style of rap, which tend to be a little bit more sort of smoother and jazzier than West Coast rap, which is a little bit harder. Okay. Number 6. Do you think you have good construct validity? Well, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to measure whether somebody likes something. I just asked them, and that's one way. But there could be problems there. Is it really East Coast rap? Is the music that I played for them really representative of East Coast rap? You could argue about that. Is a self-report rating on a scale from 1 to 10 a good way to measure it? Maybe it'd be better to measure by looking at what they buy or what they listen to most often. So there's questions about it for sure. In testing whether there's an effect of the independent variable and the dependent variable, what will my null hypothesis be? My null hypothesis is that there's no difference between the population means of people who live on the East Coast and people who live on the West Coast in their liking of East Coast rap. So let me conduct the independent t-test, because I'm comparing two groups that do not overlap. They are a mutually exclusive group. You can't live on both coasts at the same time. So I'm going to go to compare means, independent samples t-test. My independent variable is whether you live on the East Coast or the West Coast. The groups are 0 and 1. And my dependent variable is liking or enjoyment of rap from East Coast artists. And I hit OK. And here's what I get. I see the means here. The East Coast mean is quite a bit higher than the West Coast mean. So that's looks like what I thought I would probably get. The variances, there's no significant difference in the variances. So I'm going to look at this top row. Here's the observed t-value. 38 degrees of freedom because I have 40 cases in 2 samples. 40 minus 2 is 38. The significance, two-tailed, of my t-value is highly significant. That's the p-value, and the p-value is 0.000, so that's less than 0.05. So it is statistically significant. So I report the means for the two groups. The p-value is 0.000. Interpret my results. The difference between the means is statistically significant. Therefore, I reject the null hypothesis. I conclude that the difference between my sample means did not occur by chance, and there is an actual difference between the population means of people who live on the East Coast and people who live in the West Coast. People who live in the East Coast, on average, like East Coast rap more than people who live on the West Coast do. Graph my means. You can do that on SPSS. Graph. Compare subgroups. Subgroups will be there. Plot. Oh, wait. Sorry. That's not going to graph my means. That just graphs. See how the distributions, the West Coast distribution tends to be on the lower side and East Coast tends to be on the higher side. So that's one way to graph it. But that doesn't show you the means. Anyway, I don't want to make the video too long. What would I change about the way I operationalize my variables or sampled from the populations if I were to do it again? I think I try and go for a representative sample because I always think it's better for generalizability if your sample is representative. And I might just provide people in my samples with a list of songs for them to choose and see if the people on the East Coast chose East Coast rap more than West Coast rap and vice versa for the people on the West Coast. That'd be another way to do it.